Thought I'd do a little bonus with all due respect. Generally, these are crazy stories about, me, my family, things that I've gotten into. Excuse me. Actually, this is something that includes me, obviously, because remember, this is my blog. And incidentally, have you people hit, what is it? Subscribe. I don't even know what it is. But anyway, with the old Limbaugh taking his last breath a couple of days ago, I thought I'd add my 2 cents into it. We took over KMBR in 1989, actually June of 1989, and we started on our way to put together what turned out to be the premier sports radio station, not only in this market, but one of the best sports radio stations across the country. But it didn't start out that way. You know, when we took it over, basically all we had were Frank and Mike in the morning, who were a legend in this town, and were doing fairly well at a really, at the time, bad radio station in terms of its ratings. But the morning drive show was doing very well, and we also had Giants baseball. So when we took it over in June, we made some changes pretty quickly, actually. We put Ralph Barbieri in Sports Phone 68 at night. Shortly after that, we put Gene Washington in Afternoon Drive. He did that, I think, for about 3 years. Gave us a lot of notoriety. We wound up making changes in that as well. But we were on our way to being an all-sports radio station. The problem we had was our midday. And the midday, prior to us taking it over, it was all music. They were still playing music on AM radio. And that was not a good thing in radio in 1989. Anyway, we decided that we were going to make it a full-blown sports radio station, but we didn't do it immediately. And we were perplexed in terms of what to do from noon to 3. Okay, I'm sorry, from 9 after Frank and Mike got off the air till noon. So from 9 to noon, we tried a couple of 3 things. None of them really seemed to work all that well. And I got a heads up from a old friend of mine who's since passed away, a guy named Ed McLaughlin. He was had deep roots in the San Francisco Bay Area. He was, in fact, as I recall, one of the general managers of KGO Radio many, many years ago in the 60s and early 70s. I don't think, maybe in the early 70s. Anyway, he had retired. He wound up being the president of ABC Radio. All of the ABC radio programming, and he was in charge of that. Anyway, he did that for a number of years. I ran into him in New York many times. He always had a limo, so he was a good guy to hang around with. He had a limo on call 24 hours a day. I'm going to tell you about the old style of radio. Ain't the case anymore, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, so I knew him. And one of the things that he had done once he left ABC Radio, he put together a company called EFM Media. Francis McLaughlin, I don't really know his middle name, but EFM Media. And his one and only customer on EFM Media in terms of supplying to radio stations was Rush Limbaugh. He ran into Rush in Sacramento, which is where Rush really kind of made his name in talk radio. At KFBK, actually, a big AM boomer in Sacramento. Anyway, he had talked Rush into joining EFM Media and working for him, and they set out as a pair, really, to syndicate his show. And this started in, I think, 1988, latter part of 88, early part of 89. So right around the time that we bought right around the time we bought KMBR. Um, Again, we had a problem from 9 a.m. till noon, okay? Arbitron was telling us we were rated, I don't know, 39th, I think, out of 42 radio stations. So, and all the things that we were trying, none of it was working. I got a call from Ed, who said to me, hey, you know what? As you know, Rush is on KGO on the weekends. And quite frankly, I was running the radio station and was, supposedly knew everything that was going on. And I didn't even realize Rush was on the weekends because I didn't listen to KGO radio on the weekends. But what he was doing is KGO at the time, the general manager and the program director were taking an hour or two of his Monday through Friday shows and replaying them on the weekend. And Ed was very, very concerned about Rush getting a full-time position in the fourth largest market in the country, which is San Francisco. And anyway, he approached me, and I was unaware of Rush. I had known about who he was, but I didn't know much of what he was talking about. Anyway, Ed sent me hours of tapes, and I listened to it, and I thought to myself, hi, in San Francisco, this will cause a stir if there ever was one. But I went with it. I thought, you know what? I'm gonna make a deal with Eddie. So the deal was, quite frankly, a no money deal. He was they would take a couple of spots an hour from us. So it was basically a trade deal. They would take a couple of spots an hour from us, which they would then go out and resell to national advertisers. And I had the rest of the inventory. And so in, I believe, November of 1990, we put Rush on the air. And quite frankly, leading up to that, I had many, many people. Once I told several folks that I was going to do this, I had many, many people say to me, you're going to put Rush Limbaugh on the air in San Francisco? Are you crazy? This is the most liberal market in America. You can't put this guy on. I mean, he'll, you run every listener away from your station. And I thought to myself, well, I don't know about that. San Francisco certainly is an extremely liberal city. But the Bay Area is 9 counties, almost 5 million people, more than that now, with faraway places, Pleasanton, Fremont, whatever, okay? Just tons of suburbs. And I thought, not everyone carries the liberal flag in the entire Bay Area. So I thought, well, whatever. I'm willing to take the heat. I got not much to lose, and we'll put him on the air. So we did promos, whatever. And in November, I believe, again, of 90, we put him on the air. And here's the interesting part now. Rush, who I had no idea, I didn't know him. Why would I? Okay. He said, Eddie called me and he said, hey, I told Rush that you're going to take him. You're going to take him live, not, tape delay on the weekends. You're going to take him live, all 3 hours every day, Monday through Friday. And he's just over the top thrilled because when he was in Sacramento, okay, obviously the place that he had right in his radar was San Francisco because it's about 90 miles away and it is the fourth largest radio market in the country. So his being on KMBR in San Francisco was a really big deal for Rush. And so Eddie called me and he said, look, Rush wants to call you. And I said, well, fine, give him my private number, whatever. And he did. And, was going to call me at a certain time so I would be there. Anyway, he called me. I wound up having a great conversation with him. He just fell all over himself, thanking us for putting him on the air and whatever, okay? And asked if there was anything he could do for us. And I said, how about some personalized, customized promotion spots, where it's, hi, I'm Rush Limbaugh, you can catch me every day at 9 o'clock on KMBR, blah, 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 blah. Absolutely love to do it for you, whatever, okay? And he said to me, look, I'm going to stay in touch with you. So I said, yeah, okay, great, Rush. I appreciate it. And I hung up the phone, and he was a real gent and whatever, okay, and off we went. Uh, Obviously, the content of his show was, was very cringe-worthy, I think, if you will, especially if you're running a media company in San Francisco. But we let him on, and we were hoping for good things. Now, quite frankly, I signed a contract with old Eddie McLaughlin, but it had an out, okay? And I said to him, look, if I'm going to get pummeled here, and we're going to go through a rating book, which is were released every 3 months, and these ratings don't jog at all, and I'm just getting beat to death, for having this guy in the air. I'm going to be able to get out, and he agreed to that. Okay, well, as it turns out, literally, as I mentioned earlier, we were probably in that day part, I don't know, 37th in the market, 37th place in the market in that 9 to 12 time period. Rush goes on the air, and within 6 months, he's fighting for the lead as number one in that day part against Ron Owens, okay, who was the big deal talk guy in this town for years and was never challenged in terms of the ratings. Well, the old Rushbo within 6 months was crawling right up his butt, and it was unbelievable, okay? The notoriety that we got, good and bad, regardless. The ratings were unbelievably huge, and we had a wonderful relationship with Rush. Now, I mentioned that he called, that first time and whatever. He would wind up calling me like 3 times a week. Tony, Rush here. How are things going? Fine, Rush, especially in the early days. Who the hell knew, I mean, we took some initial heat for having him on the air, but it wasn't as bad as I thought, quite frankly. But he would call and say, how are things going? And I was, it's just wonderful, whatever. Don't worry about it, whatever. Geez, we got to a point where now I'm about 4 months into him being on the air, okay? And my secretary would kind of pop her head in and say, Tony, Rush is on the line. He wants to speak with you. And I'd be like, jeez. Well, this guy was driving me crazy, just with these phone calls. And they were just, they were schmooze phone calls, I'll do anything, how are things going? Anything else you need? Whatever. Okay. Anyway, so about a year in, we brought him out here. And this is a wrap up to this. About a year later, we brought him to the market. And he did a show from KMBR live across the nation from 9 to, and that's my phone. Turn that off. What is wrong with me? Anyway, he came to the market and did a show live and whatever. And, we promoted the live was, Rush was going to be here live and starting on Monday and whatever. Okay. And on that, like 2 days before that Monday, I got a call from a friend of mine who I can't remember now who it was, but he said to me, Tony, he said, do you know Bob Buich? And as it turns out, I had said hello to Bob Buich once or twice. He was the one of the brothers who owned Tadich, the very famous seafood restaurant here in San Francisco. And I said, well, I've said hello to him a couple of times, but Tadich was one of these places, no reservations, okay? I mean, you walked in, you put your name on the sheet, and I don't care who you were. In fact, there's a great story about Arnold Palmer walking in with 3 people, okay? Now, everyone in the world knows who Arnold Palmer is. Well, whoever his locals were said, let's go to Tadich. And I guess Arnie had never been there. And they walk in, and of course, everyone on the bar and in the seats and they all know who this is Arnie, and they put his name down, on the list to get a table. He waited 45 minutes. They showed no favors to anybody. Arnold Palmer waited 45 minutes to get a table at Tadich. Anyway, so, and believe me, in my time, I'd go off hours, or if I brought somebody there, I'd tell them, well, we're going to have to wait. There's just, no, I don't know anybody, whatever. Okay, so whatever. Anyway, this gent calls me, and he said, look, Bob Buich has got, several friends who are just mad about Rush. They are mad about Rush, and they wonder if Bob would like to host Rush at Tadich for a big luncheon after his show. Show ended at noon. So he said, we'd love to, have you bring him down to the restaurant. And they have these booths, in the back, with the curtains and the whole thing. And I said, well, you know what, I'll ask him. And I called him and I asked him. And he said, oh, absolutely, because he had known about Tadich. And I guess at that point I'd never been there, never eaten there. So he said, absolutely, love to do it. In the meantime, Bob, who I got in touch with finally, said to me, and look at Tony, the other thing I want you to tell Rush is we heard him talk many, many times about one of the things that he always wanted to do was get on some kind of big yacht, boat, whatever, and go under the Golden Gate Bridge. He's gone over the Golden Gate Bridge many, many times, okay, but wanted to go under the Golden Gate Bridge on some yacht. Well, guess who had a yacht? Bob Buich, okay? So Bob said to me, look, after lunch, we'd like to take Rush out on my boat. I don't know, San Francisco Yacht Club, wherever. And we'll take him under the Golden Gate Bridge or whatever. So I told Rush that. He was just all thrilled about it, whatever. Anyway, I took him over to Tadich and joined them, these 8, 9 guys. I mean, you would have thought he was Elvis. It was unbelievable. I bagged out of the yacht thing, okay? The next morning, Rush goes on the air and does, after his opening, the Pretenders or whoever, they wound up hating that he used their music. But whatever. Anyway, after the opening of the show, he winds up doing 5 minutes about Bob Buich and all these great guys he met and the Tadich, and it was the greatest restaurant in the history of man and the whole thing. I had the tape running. I brought a cassette over to Bob Buich after the fact, a couple of days after Rush left town. And the PS to the story is, I never had to wait for a table at Tadich any longer. Just a great story about Rush Limbaugh. And regardless of what people thought of him, he was a real gentleman. You may not have liked his content, but he was a soft-spoken guy in his life, and he was a real gentleman. So there you go. Oh, and by the way, I know you're out there. I can hear you breathing.